Hello and welcome to the most excellent 80s movies podcast. It's the podcast where a filmmaker, a comedian, and an author, never say die as they adventure through the 80s movies they think they love with these modern eyes to discover how well they hold up. This is Goonies, a movie selection from 1985.
Steven Spielberg presents The Goonies, a Richard Donner film.
Time, chump. Hey, Mike found the map.
Whoa, you guys realize what we could do?
I don't want to go on any more of your crazy Goonie adventures.
Meet Mikey,
I gotta go fast.
Brand, Andy,
Shame.
Come on, Brad. Slipper the tongue.
That's disgusting. No, I can't even look.
Mouse,
I gotcha. Now get out from behind there. You're ruining the painting. You're ruining my joke.
Stephanie, Data,
Booty banger. Oh, guys, isn't that neat?
and Chunk.
Flop. Thanks, Chunk.
They call themselves The Goonies. They've stumbled onto a legend, but they're not alone.
Chunk, I hope that was your stomach.
No. That's the it.
Sounds like Kong.
Discover what they uncover.
It was rubies and emeralds and diamonds.
The lost map.
Oh, Chris started the tunnel.
The secret caves.
Hey, Mikey! You can hear me! Run! Run! They're coming after you! You're
The hidden clues.
Mikey!
The treacherous traps.
Hello, Sheriff. I'm at the Lighthouse Lounge. And I want to report a murder.
Just like that last prank about all those little creatures that multiply when you throw water on them.
Take the oath.
They're here! Somebody's coming!
Join the adventure. As Steven Spielberg presents The Goonies, a Richard Donner film.
That's a really weird trailer. Am I the only one who
sounded
thinks
weird.
so?
Well,
Yeah.
80s trailers gave a lot of the story away.
And they also had a tendency to put in a bunch of stuff that didn't make it into the final movie.
That's true.
Yeah. Okay. But I do love somebody just telling me what it is. Like a nice deep
It's thrilling,
voice.
exciting.
It is very well, if you say so. I agree. It's thrilling and exciting. And I love the part where he's like reading all of their names. Brand, Andy, and Chunk. Like
And featuring Chunk.
You'll all love Data and his wacky gadgets.
I love it when they're like, I like the idea of somebody sitting at home. This trailer comes on the TV and they're like, I don't know about this Goonies thing. Let's see if this man can convince me. I'm Krissy Lenz, director of the Neighborhood Comedy Theater. And with me, as always, is filmmaker Nathan Blackwell.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for coming.
And with us, as usually, although not in a little bit, is author Craig Michael Curtis. It's so good to have you back, Craig.
It is great to be back. Thank you for having me again.
Yeah.
Frequent guest and friend of the podcast.
Indeed. And, yes, it's good that you are here because this is a big one. This is
one of the ones we have to kind of space out. It's like we can't do all the the most requested movies up front. We've got to space them out.
The heavy hitters, yes.
Just in case this podcast goes more than a year.
It's been like 3 years already, so I think we're okay. Yeah, Goonies. It's probably one of the most enduring 80s movies, certainly. And I'm just gonna assume we all watched the heck out of this movie as kids growing up. It was on TV all the time, basically.
Yeah, you watched it ad nauseum over and over again until you could memorize half the movie and recite all the lines.
Yeah, which I definitely can and still do. But everybody has. It's not just people who like 80s movies, because this movie, I'm just going to say it right up at the top, holds up so well. It's
surprisingly so. Like, it's been a while since I've seen this movie. I don't know.
Oh, is that
for
right?
what reason or whatever. Like, it's been over 15 years since I've seen it.
That's madness. I literally see this movie still like several times a year.
Wow.
And so, but I had 100% seen it and like absorbed it into my DNA when I was younger. And just for whatever reason, just hadn't come back to it. And so it was surprising how much I remembered, how much was just programmed into me. You ever have that experience to where it's like sound effects are just in your DNA?
Oh, yes.
Like you just remember the sounds that just like the sound effects of not only music, but just all the different, it's like even dialogue feels like sound effects in this movie.
Yeah.
Because the kids are constantly talking over each other like it's a Robert Altman movie. And yeah, it surprisingly holds up, even though with that distance of time, I was able to acknowledge how much of this movie is a bit funky,
A bit funky?
Yeah.
In what way?
Oh, for sure. I mean, there's so much, like, you have to, any kind of movie asks that you have a suspension of disbelief, but this one is like you have to really like commit to a suspension of disbelief, like 125%, for a lot of this to work for you.
You mean like in terms of like the booby traps?
The booby traps and the on the verge of a Home Alone kind of like adults versus kids kind of relationship or whatever.
Yeah.
And this is written by Chris Columbus, who did Home Alone, and you get kind of a bit of a sample of the kids pranking the adults, and the adults who were like viciously violent in the beginning of the movie and terrifying, and then suddenly like having like
slapstick.
How about
slapstick cartoon sound effects?
How about the fact that the movie opens with a perceived suicide in prison? This was a kids movie, right? I remember this being a kids movie, but
yes.
Roger Ebert put it really well that during this time, like Spielberg kind of had the lock on this secret formula. Back then, it's like when we think of movies that are great for kids and adults, we think of Pixar, like heartwarming, but like Spielberg kind of had the lock on these kind of movies that were more in the PG-13 realm of great for kids and adults because they were actually a little dangerous.
Yes.
But not so dangerous that they were inappropriate for kids. Like it was just dangerous and exciting enough that, like the kids were saying shit all the time.
There were at least 9 shits. Like I was counting them, and there's that many. And I remember, so we showed this movie with the city of Mesa and the Downtown Mesa Association as part of the movie series of like outside summer movies last year, or no, 2 years ago, a million years ago, when people could do things. And there were complaints because of the language,
of all the swearing.
Because
there
of all
was
the
complaints
swearing.
of all the shit.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, look, don't get on my back. Talk to the 1980s. It's not my fault. Like,
right. And things, and also, like, just the degree of, I think, horror that there was in 80s movies, was a lot greater
right.
than today, for sure. And that was, I think, kind of a thing with like these Spielberg movies, to where there is some moments, some scenes that teeter on actual horror.
Like when Trunk is trapped with a dead body, like he's trapped with a dead body in
a meat locker
cabinet. Yeah. And so I'm watching it with my 15-year-old, and she's like, that's traumatizing. That's trauma. Like, that Chunk is going to grow up to be a murderer or something, and he can track it back to this trauma.
It's played for a comedy beat, though, and I think that's like that, and like Gremlins and a couple of others. It's like It's like starter horror for kids. Like, this is to introduce you to the horror genre.
It is, and it works, and I'm into it.
And it's interesting because, like, even like Poltergeist, which is like a straight up quote horror film, it can't go all the way to horror. It still has that sort of like Spielberg touch to it, that Spielberg syrup, in a good way, but also in a way that is like, keeps it from being an actual like horror film,
Right. And so, like, in the evaluation of the movie, those are all things that I would like count as a ding, right? Like, oh, ding, I'm gonna take off a point for that. I'm going to take off a point for the suicide at the beginning. I'm going to take off a point for how violent and murdery these people are at the beginning. But then I also found myself adding a lot of those points back in. It's like, okay, you get back
it's
your
a weird
suicide point.
Yeah, exactly. It's a weird balancing act that this movie does of tone that shifts all the time and surprisingly works.
It does. And, I think if you are asking me what you want in a kid's movie that will have that magic and stand the test of time, which this movie absolutely has, like, those are the things you want. You want it to have heart, you want it to have danger, you want it to have adventure and Rube Goldberg machines and all of those things. And this movie has them all, and has them in very good balance, I think. And the part that I always sort of skip over in my brain is the plot. The plot of what's happening, because it's literally the least important thing in the whole world of why are they trying to find this treasure.
Such a classic 80s trope of the developers are going to destroy our wonderful little pocket of this world, our little neighborhood, unless we come up with something. We hatch a plan to stop the developers tomorrow.
Yeah,
right.
Making a golf course on this highly mountainous neighborhood.
Right. And of course, like, everybody is going to be, so all the friends are going to be scattered to the winds, and they'll lose their little sense of community that they have here. So that's where the movie starts, is the mom is getting ready to move, apparently at a moment's notice.
Right. But she would like the house to be clean when they tear it down.
Yes, which I feel seen by that. Yes, I'm with her. So she has hired Rosalita, a Spanish-speaking helper to pack things up, and I guess they're gonna move tomorrow. So they've got like 24 hours while the parents are at work to somehow save the goon docks. Now, did you see docks? Were there docks? I was unclear on that.
I was barely seeing coastline, much less docks. I think it was meant to be like the Boondocks, where it's the outskirts of town, where it's far away from everything. And
okay.
I don't think it was officially supposed to be docks. It was just supposed to be a play on the boondocks, which is a term for having a remote region that's kind of far away from everything. But they call it the Goondocks anyway.
Okay. So I did Google what is a Goonie. Because I don't know. It's very unclear what a Goonie is. And they make reference to the Goonie oath in the trailer. But that scene was cut from the movie. So what is your take on what is a Goonie?
There are words they never say, or there's one word they never say.
And it's not shit, because they
never say shit.
Yeah. I mean, it's it's like any grouping of kids. They kind of like they've created a club, like an association, because they all feel like outsiders,
right?
And so they've named it the Goondocks, their areas, and they call themselves Goonies,
right?
Yeah. It's I don't know.
I don't know either. It doesn't matter. Look, it doesn't matter. None of it matters.
My guess is that it connects more to that feeling that you've got as a kid of needing some sort of connection, needing some sort of tribe,
yes. Yes.
And so I think.
So we meet the gang, and of course Mikey, Sean Astin, is the heart. He is the person who wants more than anything to save the Goonies and solve this problem. His older brother Thanos
and Samwise.
Yes, together at last. Who is supposed to be like babysitting them, I guess. And then Mouth, who is Corey Feldman, who is just an annoying little shit. Who is, I guess, he provides the spark. Like his role is to be the troublemaker in this little team. In fact, he tells Rosalita, he tells Mikey's mom that he can translate what she's saying to Rosalita and help give her the instructions for cleaning the house. And he basically takes the opportunity to just like mess with her.
This is where we keep the sex dungeon, and
yeah, he was surprisingly specific and very quick on those.
Yes. And Rosalita was surprisingly okay with most of it. I mean, she did sort of cluck a bit and say, oh no. Yeah, and but she's like, okay. I mean,
was this before or after the scene where multiple children handled the penis?
It was during. It's all happening at the same time.
Again, kids film.
Yes. Well, and it's like, okay, so the dad works at the museum, which is why which is the explainer for why they have all this stuff in the house.
Historical memorabilia in the attic.
Right. But there's also Data, who is an inventor and a gadgeteer. Yes, indeed. And who am I missing? Oh, and Chunk, who is the outcast of the outcasts, and only
he's the
chubby one.
He's the He's also the runner-up in terms of like, if Mouth ever left
to fill the dead air,
Mouth, it would be Chunk to fill the. Yeah, he's also just nonstop in terms of talking
and lying. Like he's into lying, and that's what all the adults in the community know about him is that Chunk makes up
tall
stories.
tales.
Yes.
Tall tales.
So of course they go up into the attic and they find a map to a treasure that everyone in the community knows about. It's sort of like locally in Arizona, we have the Lost Dutchman mine, which is like, that's what I would compare it to. It's like this local legend that everyone knows about. It's based in historical fact or whatever of like a treasure that's, lost.
Yeah, everyone's trying to find One-Eyed Willie's gold.
And as before we go on, the as crude and as colorful the language as the kids use, and as knowing as at least Mouth is about such things, no one makes any reference about the double entendre of One-Eye Willie.
No. Everybody just looks that right in the face and is like, "What? You gonna say something? Are you gonna be the one who says something about it? You're the one with the dirty mind, friend." Yes, I love it. And so they decide that's what they're gonna do with their last day as buds, is go try and find this treasure. And it's like, yeah, that sounds great. That sounds like a fun activity. I feel like the parents would sign off, but to do that, they have to trick Brand, the older brother. And what they do is, like, he's playing around with this piece of exercise equipment, which fascinated my children. It's basically just springs
with handles on both ends.
And your goal is to pull the springs apart, and that's how you get muscles.
That's how you get cut.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's my understanding. So they just like, oh, Brant, how far apart can you pull that? And then they wrap him up in it, to which my 10-year-old son just looked right at me and deadpan said, should have gone for the head. And I'm like, ooh, creepy. So they escape. Brand has to chase them on a like toddler bike. And we're off. The adventures.
He steals the toddler bike from a little girl, by the way.
He does. And then he gets sort of like, he bumps into the villain, who is
it's like right out of like Caddyshack or Revenge of the Nerds or something. It's like, you nerds, out of the way, I'm getting in my car.
Yeah. And the first thing I'm gonna do is sort of sexually harass the female lead who Brant is in love with. Like,
yeah,
you wait.
Yeah, and he's also the son of the developer who wants to tear down the neighborhood. What?
No way! What a coincidence!
Nerds, you Goonies.
So.
Oh my god! So there's a deleted scene. So one of the most ridiculous moments is later in the movie where he yells at Andy, the girl, "You Goonie!"
Yeah.
And so in one of the deleted scenes, like that's like done like 4 times, like the acknowledgement of that they're Goonies and that's a terrible thing. Like where he's like, they're in a convenience store and he's just bullying all the kids. It's like, take this, you Goonie! Oh, you Goonies! Goonies!
So it's a pejorative.
It's just really selling it.
The cop refers to them as Goonies at some point, doesn't he?
Does he?
Doesn't he? I think so.
I wouldn't be surprised.
So before we get into like the treasure spelunking, the kids have a run-in with the Fratellis, who are murderers.
Yes.
Right. 100% these are killers.
This is not the wet bandits where, they're mean, but they're not like evil. No, these guys are like, cold-blooded killers / counterfeiters.
Mm-hmm. Robert Davi and Joe Joey Pants.
Joey Pants.
And so their operation is in this seasonal restaurant. And the kids are like, well, obviously the adventure starts at this seasonal restaurant.
Yeah.
As all adventures do. And
the kids go in, and these gangsters are the worst at improv.
They really are. They should take a class.
They tip their hand so hard, in terms of the gangster thing. The explanation would have been so easy. It's like, this is a summer place and it's the winter, but we're actually doing like renovation. So kids, we're not open. Instead, it's like, it's like the whole place looked like it was trashed.
It did. It doesn't look like a summer abandoned place or a winter place. It looks like a haunted,
an abandoned.
Place.
Yeah, and super obvious. And what they should have done is instead, what they did is, it's like, of course it's a real restaurant. What do you want? What should we? No, we'll get you water. You would just want water? Okay, great. Go get some waters. Like, It's like, no, kid, we're not open.
Yeah,
we're not going to be open for a month.
Just scoot.
So again, a knock against realism in the Goonies.
No. Indeed.
I'm also going to point out historical inaccuracies about pirates later in the podcast.
Please do, because I was really curious as to how many pirates made their way to Oregon.
Speaking of historical inaccuracies, just for this particular thing, when we're talking about the restaurant, before they go to the restaurant, they find this as a marker. They have a little doubloon with like 3 eye skull things in it, and they do like Rise of Skywalker style. Hold it up happen to be at just the right angle, holding it up. Oh, this is the place because I can see the lighthouse over here and the restaurant over here and the rock over here because this is the right place. And this doubloon is like from 1632, I think. And even if the lighthouse was built in 1630s in Oregon, the restaurant has been around for 350 years.
So that's why it's so haunted. That's why it's so popular.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, I've that always has stuck with me as like, I don't get it. Why would the pirates make a coin and be like, pick out?
You want the real answer? They were unemployed and they had a lot of time on their hands.
They did.
And I'm glad that they did something creative.
Me too. There's a big overlap between pirates and crafters. Which I feel really like they would have, modern day pirates all have cricket machines and they are, call themselves makers now, but they are into the arts. They are into,
I bet there were a lot of dismissive pirates back then too, who were critical of all these booby traps and all these maps. Which are delightful.
They are delightful. And it made me think of, and I think we talked about this a little bit when we talked about Raiders, but there is a brilliant Robot Chicken sketch where it's the guy who designed the it's not the Temple of Doom, but the temple from the beginning of Raiders. And he's like, okay, now what do you think happens here? Darts come out and we're gonna make them look like they're angry faces, and the guy's just like, that sounds expensive. He's like, but it's gonna be so worth it once you see it all come together. And I want that for Goonies. I want there to be like one pirate who like is just like, it's like One-Eyed Willie's cousin, Two-Eyed Jeff, who's like, I just want to pitch you an idea, Willie. All right. We build a piano out of bones. Now, I know it's going to take a long time to get the bones, boil the bones, dry the bones.
And tune the bone piano as well.
Tune the bones.
Who here is a piano tuner before you became a pirate? Show of hands.
All right. We kill that guy last.
I'm like, look, it's going to be really, really hard to set it all up because what we need is for the floor to fall out if you push the wrong piano key. And look, it's a very complex, but I'm telling you, it is going to be worth it. It's something that people are going to really remember if they try to steal your gold. People will talk. They'll tell stories about it. They're going to love it.
Unless they know how to basically play a piano, because all you have to do is play the notes correctly. Or
unless they walk around the edge of the room, which is what the Fratellis do. They walk around the 3-foot ledge.
Well, after the floor goes out, you need to I just need to get to the thing. So we'll have a little secondary route. No one's going to see that ledge, so that'll be for us to use.
It's so dimly lit. It really, no one's gonna see it.
But that's very Indiana Jones as well, though. It's like, the Goonies go through and they take the time to like solve all the mysteries and unravel all the traps, and then the people who just stroll in behind them, are like, oh yeah, well thanks. Someone had to go first.
Well, it's again the kind of Spielberg logic, and so this movie is not directed by Steven Spielberg, but it's a Spielberg kind of produced and created project.
You can definitely see his hand.
It very much has his DNA,
yes,
and the style, which is, if it works, if the audience is with it, then logic takes a way back seat.
So far in the back seat. Like, and I don't even want it in the car with me, frankly. Like I'm on board. Like,
logic is locked in the trunk.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole idea that thousands of snakes would be able to live in that Egyptian tomb is preposterous, but it's also fucking awesome.
Yes, it is. And that's the point. You get to, there's a concept in improv that we talk about, which is like, if you earn the weird, then
then
you
it
get
just goes.
the weird.
Yeah.
If you
It's a
earn it
pass.
with awesomeness, you get a pass. And that's
just let it happen.
yeah,
Just let it
you
happen.
just let it happen. And there are plenty of movies and things where they don't earn it, and I'm just like, no, explain this to me or get the F out of here. But not this one. And Steven Spielberg has that power to just be like, watch what I can do. And he does it best. So like, we're in the tunnels. There's this weird moment where, of course, like, modernization has happened in these tunnels and tombs. There's a bunch of pipes, and the scene I always forget is when the kids like bang on the pipes, because at this point they're trying to escape,
right,
and get out of the tunnels. Everyone wants out except Mikey. Like, they were all on board to start the adventure, but once
the shit got too real,
it did.
But he's still like, no, this is our chance to save the neighborhood, save the Goondocks, to save our connection to each other. Because in a lot of ways, this movie is about that end of innocence of like all your childhood friends moving away.
Yeah. So everyone's trying to escape. They push on all the pipes, and thinking that people will be able to hear them and will rescue them. But what happens instead is they shoot the bad guy off a toilet into the sky. And they sort of have to continue. They find the wishing well. They end up in a wishing well where the guy who just got shot off a toilet has recovered, apparently, and went to hang out with his friends by the wishing well. And that's one of my favorite parts, is when they're like, oh, this must be the treasure. This is the rich stuff. It's all these coins from the wishing well.
They're really jazzed about pennies and quarters, I tell you.
Yes.
Well, first they think they found the pirate gold.
Right.
And I think it was a really cool idea, and it kind of sets us up for our expectations of seeing this room just filled with coins everywhere. And then they realize, oh, it's pennies and nickels.
It's the bottom of a wishing well. And we get my favorite possibly line of the movie where he's like, we can't take, Mikey's like, we can't take these. These are people's wishes. These are people's dreams. And Mouth is, of course, well, this one was mine. This was my dream and it didn't come true, so I'm taking it back. And I'm like, oh my God, you like, talk about loss of innocence. It's like, oh my
like
God,
his Oscar speech.
It is, and that's just
I went to bet that was his demo reel for like 5 years.
Yes, yeah, and it, that moment is so heartbreaking. And then, of course, Mikey uses that to convince everyone, like, let's keep going. Chester Copperpot didn't make it this to the wishing well. We should keep going. And they do. They decide to. Even the girls.
Chester Copperpot, by the way, is an adventurer from like 30 years ago who disappeared looking for the treasure, and they find his skeleton like further up the line. Mm-hmm. And they also find, apparently, Mikey finds a Lou Gehrig baseball card, and he goes, "Oh, Lou Gehrig," and then like
throw this shit away.
That's only worth $30,000. I'll get rid of that. That
was the treasure. That was the treasure.
They ended the movie then and
rather
there.
than the spoiler alert, the marble bag full of gems. It should have been, oh yeah, but I got this Lou Gehrig baseball card. Oh, that's worth $500,000 right there. That'll pay for the entire town.
Yeah,
right.
Just stick that in your pocket.
That will pay for half of the homes. Ooh, this just got awkward. Sorry, Chunk. Sorry, Mouth.
Chunk and Data, you're on the cut list.
Yeah.
Right. Let's see. Right. Who fucked up during the adventure? Let's see.
who kept saying to go back?
Right.
Here you go, Mouth. Here's your dream. Here's your wish. This is what you said you wanted. Now get out of here.
Enjoy your quarters.
Yes. So the further they go, the more Rube Goldbergian the traps sort of become.
Mm-hmm. And historically inaccurate.
Tell me more, Nathan. How are they inaccurate?
Right. I don't know.
I don't know. And they're being okay, so meanwhile, while this is all happening, Chunk has been left behind, stuck in a freezer with a dead body, and is being questioned by the Fratellis under threat of having his hand chopped up in a blender. Like,
Yeah, that was freaky. That was sort of nightmare fuel-y for me when I was a kid.
Oh yeah,
because it was real. You could imagine that, like your little hand and a blender with those blades, and they demonstrate like putting fruit in the blender and seeing it chopped up, just so you know this is your hand here in a couple of seconds. So yeah, that freaked me out even more than Chunk's new best friend. Shortly after that, freaked me out. The blender thing as a kid really like, I was tucking my little fists under my armpits.
Oh, poor Greg was traumatized.
I was.
More traumatized than
and
Mouth.
Look what happened.
Because Mouth is still, or not Mouth, Chunk is still focused on food and eating because that's his character trait. You know, that he just, even when they're threatening to blend him up and he's trapped with a dead body, he's like, okay, yeah, I'm trapped with a dead body, but is there ice cream in here? Yeah. Like, what are we talking about snack wise?
Rocky Road.
He tells them about the treasure, and that confused me because I think in my mind I thought that Fratellis knew about the treasure.
Yeah, like they were looking for it too, and they just couldn't find the entrance or something. But no, they weren't. They didn't even know about it at all.
They had no idea. They just happened to choose that ancient.
They were doing
pirate restaurant, apparently. Yeah, which is fine. But yeah. So then, why were they at that historical pirate times restaurant? They just chose it.
It was just coincidence. It was out of the way, probably shut down, and they were using that as their base of operation. Okay. So it wasn't a recent thing because they've set up this whole counterfeiting thing.
Right.
Assuming that they set it up, maybe they knew someone who set it up and they killed them or whatever, but it basically was their base of operation.
I think their ancestors might have built that restaurant like in the 1630s.
Yes. They're pirate ancestors. Yes.
It's been in the family for hundreds of years.
So Chunk tells them the story about the treasure, and they're like, okay, well, let's check it out. They leave Chunk behind with the third brother, Sloth, who is I don't know. How would you...
Hideously deformed?
Yeah, which we later learn is the mom's fault.
Potentially, yeah.
Potentially.
Dropping her baby multiple times. It's possible that he had some birth defects when he was born, which made him more droppable.
Right.
but yeah.
Just slides through the arms.
And they just sort of neglect him. Like, they keep him around, but they sort of neglect him.
Well, they chain him up, neglect him. That's not like they forgot about him. It's that, no, we're going to chain him up and we're going to stick him in front of a TV. And we'll just throw food at him. And
they do say, I hope he hasn't broken his chains because I don't want to go back to the zoo and get new ones.
Do they have chains at the zoo? I've never seen a chained animal
What
at
are they
the zoo.
chaining up
I've never seen a chain at the zoo.
And you would know, right, Nathan?
Yeah, I used to work at a zoo. Yeah, I don't remember. But then again, I wasn't that behind the scenes in terms of...
animal chaining?
Animal chaining, right? But I have to be honest, I didn't see a lot of animals in chains.
So Sloth so the Fratellis are behind them, and then the Sloth and Chunk are behind them. Of course, Chunk tries to tell the authorities, but his story is so fantastical, and he is such a known liar. And adults, don't listen to, care about, or believe children. In the 80s, or ever. So they're all on their own, and off everyone goes. So now there's like a trail of people coming through the treasure zone, and of course,
treasure zone.
So they finally get through all the traps, and they find the pirate ship in this giant cavern, which there's 18 different entrances. You're telling me no one else found any of the entrances. Like it's literally
It is a cave huge enough to hold a pirate galleon.
With all the sails all the way
Yeah.
up,
and plenty of room just for other activities at the same time.
Yeah.
Like
there's
that's how it's advertised.
It's a spacious square footage
for other activities for your entire galleon.
They had
and other activities,
and they have a booby trap. The last booby trap that gets sprung is something that starts bringing the cave down, but it opens up a hole big enough for the ship to get out. And I think the whole point was that they were trapped in there, so they were guarding the treasure with the booby traps. But let's make one where we could escape if we sprung this booby trap.
That must have been the last one.
Yeah.
That must have been the last one. At that point, he was just too sad.
But I will tell you what. I love the idea. First of all, of pirates being like top-notch crafters, but also of them just like committing themselves to dying mid-activity. Like pirates are really into like, no, I'm going to die doing what I love, sitting at the table.
I want my skeleton to be pointing to Bob right here.
Well, that's the thing. So wasn't One-Eyed Willie? Didn't he like kill everyone to protect his treasure?
That's what the story said.
Yeah, and then who knows if that's
actually and then he just sat down.
Telling each other the stories
because apparently, like one guy got out and then made the doubloon and the map, and he could have put his own spin on things. Come on, fake news.
And then like Willie is like, okay, well my job is done. The treasure is safe. I now will sit down to die.
I'll look this way in case some kid is ever standing next to the table.
So, do you think he killed all the other pirates as they were doing normal activities?
Yes.
And he was just very quick about it? Like, did he poison them? Or did he, like, place them afterwards into
like he killed them and they propped up their bodies so that they're...
No, right. That's even more sinister and macabre.
It is. And
but probably more realistic.
These dead bodies, he props them up and, we're having a tea party. Basically, his last months... He was just doing a tea party with a bunch of dead guys that he had propped up at the table.
No, it's part of the pirate code, right?
We smothered them one by one.
You commit. You're like, look, I commit myself.
Them.
It's a pirate's life for me.
I want to die so that my skeleton is holding a coin aloft, like he's examining it.
Now that is historically accurate.
Like you agree to be killed by your captain and the post in whatever tableau fits the treasure map.
There were a lot of pirate rules or guidelines, and that was one of them.
That's true.
So
That's true. The kids all find the treasure. The Fratellis also find the treasure.
The one thing I want to point out as well, the kids never call it treasure. They call it like rich stuff. Like they forgot the word. So they just call it throughout the entire movie. Oh, and he buried it with a whole bunch of rich stuff. And then at the end of the movie, and Mikey's like, yeah, he got the rich stuff, and we lost all the rich. They constantly called it rich stuff, which I was like,
what is this? Some crazy like Oregon slang? Like soda pop versus like...
They didn't say gold. They didn't say jewels. They didn't say booty, like a pirate thing, and they didn't say treasures. Like they couldn't think of the word that they could use. So they just call it, the rich stuff, the rich stuff.
Yeah, as if that word were perhaps copywritten or something, and they couldn't say it. Like we all know what we're talking about.
Damn you, Robert Louis Stevenson, and your rich stuff island.
It's like saying the big game instead of Super Bowl or whatever.
Or awards night instead of the Oscars.
Yes. One-Eyed Willie wrote and trademarked the term treasure, and so no one...
That's how he got all that money, man.
Yeah.
All that rich stuff.
He got it legally through piracy.
Through copyright law.
Copyright piracy.
So...
And now you know the rest of the story.
Sloth and Chunk have also caught up to everyone, and Sloth chooses.
Right. The prequel comic book to the Goonies is all about copyright law.
So the kids all escape. Their parents are all on the beach, like waiting for them. And of course, there's like the moment of reunion where I'm like, so they've been gone like an afternoon. Like, were they even gone overnight?
They're gone overnight.
Okay.
They were gone overnight. Yeah, because you Goody, that was at night for sure.
Yeah.
They basically went. It was like the night was going. They had one night to save the Goondocks,
Mm-hmm.
But they hadn't started packing yet.
No,
Mm-hmm.
no.
And the dad,
and they were both, all
apparently the last
work,
holdout was apparently still hadn't signed the lease over until the moment they're getting ready to demolish.
Yeah. So the other prequel comic is about real estate law, and
right.
So they're all telling their story, like they're very excited, like, oh my god, and there's there's an octopus and there's this and there's that and Fratellis and everybody, and they're all like,
and the octopus was in the deleted
I
scene.
was gonna say, I was like, he says that it wasn't like he was making it up. He says that so earnestly, and I'm thinking, octopus, was that like was
dick.
the piano an octopus and I didn't notice it?
What a liar.
Yeah. He wasn't
no, there was an octopus in the deleted scene.
Okay,
yes.
Well,
there was. That was like the end of the movie, the alternate ending of the movie. It's very available. Like you can find it. It's on some versions of the DVD, but it's also just like a Google away. And so, but the bad guy is still there. He's like, yeah. Your children were just rescued. Whatever. Sign this paper. We're still evil.
Well, okay.
And the dad, who is such a charming dork, like the dad is such a cute little charming dork, is like, hey, as long as I've got you and Brand, I'm the richest person in Astoria.
That's the real rich stuff.
That's the treasure was the friends we made along the way. And the other dad is like, actually, I'm the richest person in Astoria. Sign this paper. But luckily, in a plot twist that has always confused me, Mikey put some jewels in his pocket.
In a marble bag.
And so they don't. Yeah. So they saved the Goondocks.
The Fratellis saw this bag and said, "Oh, it says marble bag, so there couldn't possibly be treasure in there. Empty your pocket. Spit out those jewels." Like Mouth literally has like a string of pearls and a bunch of jewels inside of his mouth that they make him spit out one by one. And they're like pulling the girl's hair to pull out all the jewels in their hair. But they said like, "Oh, here's a bag full of no, it says marbles, so you can have that back, kid."
Yeah. No,
look, but it's marbles on there, so there's marbles in there.
And then, but it's like, okay, couldn't they also just be like over there? That's where we just it's over there. Like, let's take a short walk.
But no, see, the ship escaped, and there is no ship in the 20th century that can outrun a pirate galleon.
Damn it! With all those sails, it's so fast. Shoot it from the air. Shoot it down.
Nope, it's just gonna be gone forever. And the only thing that survived is the rich stuff that Mikey put in his marble bag
and that Lou Gehrig baseball card.
Yes, which right.
And to be honest, like just because they found it doesn't mean that it's theirs.
No, it's definitely not theirs. But I
I googled in terms of
salvage law,
finding salvage treasure. Like
that's the other prequel. Salvage law.
That treasure is theirs, right? That's
there's
that's the animated Netflix cartoon.
That's what the Cyndi Lauper song should have been about. It's like
about salvage law
and copyright law and real estate law.
Yeah, they don't get to keep it. Like it belongs to the state of Oregon, you know.
Yeah, and the United States.
And they're definitely gonna like put it all in a museum. But I don't think Steven Spielberg like knows about that. I think he thinks that like finders keepers is like the law of the land. Because that's Indiana Jones's whole thing too. It's like, I found it, it's mine now. I'm gonna sell it to a museum. Like
Mm-hmm.
What?
It's like it belongs in a museum, and technically, I've got a
I've
museum,
got a
at home.
museum.
And they pay me to find stuff for them. So yeah. So anyway, the day is saved. All is well. And that is the Goonies. So
Airtight.
like absolutely. So on a scale of 1 marble bag to 10 marble
How
bags,
many one-eyed willies?
how many willies
Ugh.
do you give it? I'm really curious to know.
Yeah, it's a tough one. It's a tough one for sure. The number that jumps out in my head is 8.
Okay.
Which
and
is,
so
I feel
what
like,
did you ding it off for?
Just I get historical inaccuracies. I don't know. There's
Nathan, you're such a
some
stickler.
scenes-
He is. He really is.
It just feels like an 8 to me, to where there's a lot of solid love, and then there's a lot of like, okay, that's ridiculous, but I still like it.
Mhm.
Just that, everyone is talking over everyone, and suddenly you have this very John Williams-esque. It takes a sharp left turn, and there's like these John Williams-esque, music moments where everyone is suddenly eloquent, and then
That's
people are playing the skeleton piano,
Mhm.
and then the next scene they're just like forgetting all that and just walking on the side of the room, and
Yeah.
I think one of the things is all the kids seem to have their own little character arc, but
Yeah.
they all get like in the writing process or in the production process, it's like, okay, your character arc is reduced to a single monologue. Okay, so Mouth, you get to say the well thing, and you this is my dream and it didn't come true. That's the extent of your character arc. There's no growth beyond that or before that. It's just that one
Well,
line. And
wait,
basically everyone, like Data,
Mouth-
it's like everyone
Mouth
makes
has-
fun of me for these inventions I have. And then that's it. No one's ever made fun of him for his inventions, but he says it that one time and then moves on. Everyone gets just the one line of dialogue that describes their character arc, and then back to the adventure. We need to move the plot forward.
Okay, I'm going to disagree just slightly with you, Craig, because there is also, we can't forget, in the 80s, kids' movies had to have romance. There had to be some, like, element of the kids, like, having some sort of romantic something.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, of course, Thanos is, like, hot for the redhead.
It's more the opposite. She's into him, and he's kind of, like, sort of into her, but, like, she's, like, constantly, if she's not screaming, you're talking about Andy, then she's constantly trying to lure him into the back of the cave so they can make out. Like she's more into him than he is. I mean, he's into her, but she's way into him. Like like this is a great opportunity for me to make out with Brand.
Yes, forget the mortal peril that we're in.
Exactly.
I'm going to take this opportunity to get it on. And of course she ends up smooching Mikey.
Which was weird.
Her very logical and down to earth friend Martha Plimpton is has this like will they or won't they moonlighting vibe with Mouth. Like they have a real back and forth that is odd. And then at the end they have a moment together where like she says you're actually not that bad when your mouth doesn't ruin it or something like that. And he says, well, yeah, you're not that bad when your face doesn't ruin it. Right? He says something like that to her. So there's like a weird romance under pinning. So Mouth does grow as a person.
It's interesting because they look like they're 5 years apart.
Yeah.
It
looks like she's
tall and he's a baby.
She's like 16 and he's 12, so it's like it's only a few years.
Yeah,
but it's enough where
they're only like 12 months apart.
Yeah,
in terms of actual age. But she got puberty and he hadn't.
Yeah, he had not yet been issued his Oregon State puberty.
Right.
So yes, I hear you in terms of like, yeah, my character thing is this, like like Chunk, my character thing is I'm always hungry. that's what it is, and I'm never gonna stop doing it. That's the thing I signed up for, and that's that. So how does that affect your rating, Craig?
Well, as you know, my rating is based on like multiple criteria that
Of course.
Good. Explain them all,
well,
please.
like three main things. Is it a good movie? Is it a good 80s movie? And does it hold up to modern standards? Those three are the main criteria. And for me, those three are like all over the map. It is a great 80s movie.
It is.
Is it a good movie? No.
Oh, ow.
And does it hold up? It's dodgy. So it is a wonderfully charming movie. I love the fact that the kids talk like kids. It is a movie made for 12 and 13-year-old boys. And when I was 12 and 13-year-old, it was a great movie because the kids sound like, when you can tell the difference between kids talking like kids in movies and kids reading lines that an adult wrote that they think kids would say in the movie. So, but these sound like kids. They're talking over each other, like Nathan says. They're saying, just they sound like authentic kids. And even today, that holds up. They would say shit, and they would say, I don't know about the not knowing the word treasure, but they would poke fun at each other. They would do dumb jokes to each other, and they do that in this movie. They sound like actual kids, and I love that. It's a very charming movie. So it holds up in being charming. But yeah, the logic, the checking your logic at the door, it really strains credulity. There are stuff that's so stupid they could never get away with doing it. There's stuff I don't even mind the fact that it's a kids movie and they're doing like murder and
suicide.
And suicide and all of the stuff that's very hard PG-13 in a modern context. That like a modern producer say, no, this is a kids movie, Steve. We need to not be,
So the suicide has to be fake. So that's for the kids.
Exactly. And he didn't actually murder any cops on the way. We didn't see his exit from jail. We just saw him exit the cell. But I assume he killed like three guards on the way out. But we didn't see that, fortunately. But it's in the.
It wasn't when all the guards kept pouring out of the building. There was like 4 of them. All of them were putting on their outside jackets. Like their hands, they didn't have guns out.
It's Oregon. You have to dress for weather.
They were all like stuck in the motion of putting on their outdoor jackets.
Everybody knows, Nathan. That's when you break out. Is when they're when they're doing their Mr. Rogers change from inside to outside clothes.
Right.
That's when you do it.
The criminal's advantage.
So, but wait, you still haven't said a number.
I haven't. I've. But yeah, it was.
Thank God for podcast.
I'm not. This is all staying in. I'm not taking anything. It's going to be the 8-hour podcast.
I was going to suggest that an early draft of this movie, they probably said, first off, a smart screenwriter would have put this location in New England. And so that made more sense. You could still have the climate and all that stuff and just have it like in Maine or even like Nova Scotia or something. And then we can shoot in Astoria and we'll just say it's Astoria. No one's going to care that Oregon is in the Pacific Ocean where there was like no European ships in the 17th century. But, no one's going to notice that. The second thing I would have done is I would have set this, instead of being contemporary, I would have set in the 1930s. Because it sounds, I don't know, it feels like more of a hard scrabble time. The Great Depression, like everyone moving away, and the treasure hunter aspect of it. I think they might have thought of that, and like the Chester Cobblepot or whatever his name was from the 30s. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of an era of independent adventurers too. So it just feels like it would have worked better as a period piece from the 1930s. That's me. Anyway, my overall, I'm going to give this a 6.5 because it is a wonderful movie. It is nostalgic for me personally. And I have a warm place in my heart for it. But is it a good movie and does it stand up to time? No, that's where it loses points with me. But it's enough to give me. I'll give it a 6.5.
Okay. All right. Yowza.
Mhm.
Well, you're both wrong. This movie is a straight up 10. Like not
Hey.
Yeah, so like I use a similar rubric, if you will, Craig, which is like, does this movie hold up? Is it still fun? Will I sit down and watch it at any time, at any point that it is on? Is it still fun? And do kids still want to watch it? And the answer is yes. It checks all those boxes, and I forgive all of the rules of logic that are broken, because I just love it so much. And I think that it's hard. It's hard to make a movie that is equally appealing to kids and adults. And I think it's really hard to strike the tone, even though it sort of bounces around. It has the tones of adventure and danger and all of the things. So I put this, there's a reason this movie has stood the test of time, and it's because it is so fun. It's just fun, you gotta suspend your disbelief for the fun. It's a Disneyland ride.
Well, let me ask you this: if Disney had made this movie today, I think everyone would be excoriating it. I think
do you think so?
I think they would say they're being emotionally manipulative, like they always are. They're using a very basic plot lines, and they're just like throwing logic out the window. The internet would be spewing with hate about this is the worst thing that this ever existed, and Disney is destroying our culture. So,
man, Craig is in a really dark place.
So, speaking
that's
of
why
that,
I think it works great in the 80s, because you just went with it in the 80s. Today, whether it holds up today, that's the question.
Okay, so, but speaking of that, so there's a movie that came out this year called Finding Ohana. Have you heard of it?
I have not.
No.
Okay. So it is, like all movies that have come out in the now times, it was like a straight to streaming release. I'm looking it up. I don't think it's Disney. Was it Disney? Blah blah blah.
No, it's Netflix. It's Netflix.
Okay, so yeah, it's a Netflix original, but it's basically Goonies, so much so that Data is in it. And he's in it, and he says, like, he says all the little lines. He's like, "Oh, you stepped in a puddle. Now you've got slick shoes." Turn to camera and wink. And it's this basic story of Goonies, but with like a Hawaiian twist. So they, the kids have to try and save, Grandpa's farm or whatever. So they have to like try and find the lost treasure of blah blah blah, and everything's a Rube Goldberg machine, and this and that. So it is a modern Goonies.
They have to find an ancient Roman submarine on Mars.
But it's it was good. I watched it with the kids. And they liked it. We liked it. It was cute. It was whatever. The message is like that family is more important than family is the real treasure, and
rich stuff.
Not the rich stuff. So that's like, probably not my deep cut recommendation, because I feel like it's too obvious. In fact, like if you Google Finding Ohana, it will link you to Goonies. It'll be like, were you looking for Goonies? Is that what you're looking for? So I don't think it's that deep of a cut, but yeah, so it's like modern Goonies. I wouldn't expect you guys to have heard of it though, because was basically pitched to get people my age who love Goonies and who have kids my kids' age. So so what would your deep cut recommendation be, Nathan?
Okay, so I'm going to recommend a video game called The Sea of Thieves.
Okay.
So it is a pirate adventure game that Craig and I have recently gotten into back in December. And it's not the kind of game that I thought I'd be gravitated to, because it does have a PvP component to it, but there is a certain degree of adventure and unpredictability and finding lost treasure and sailing the high seas that was actually very inspired by the Goonies. You know, the developers have said that. So in terms of like, there is kind of like this open world that you can kind of encounter people who have their own, this like actual players who have their own morality. If they want to be nice, if they want to be terrible, they can. But there is, in terms of like the story mode, like what's called the Tall Tales, there is a lot of like, I've got the doubloon with the hole and I've got to line it up with the thing to follow the clue and then the treasure map to then get gold and things like that. And so, you know, if you're into video games, if you're into things like that, it does kind of channel a lot of some of that same feeling of adventure. And if you do get friends together, you can kind of have that kind of feeling of bonding with your friends. So
I get it. You have
and
friends, Mr. Braggy.
And sometimes you just get dumpstered by a bunch of 10-year-olds.
Okay.
Which is also a thing.
Lovely. Yeah, I've never heard of it. And you also have a video game recommendation, Greg?
Yeah. Well, I was going to sarcastically recommend a map of North America as my default recommendation. So you can see the difference between the Caribbean and Oregon. But that aside, that you know, trademark aesthetic remark by me aside, I wanted to recommend, and it's weird that you're getting 2 video game recommendations for this, but whatever.
But that's basically how we've been spending our pandemic.
Exactly. There's this game that is primarily PC, but I think it's also on PS4 and Nintendo. It's called Undertale, and it's a role-playing game. It's sort of a retro role-playing game, and it is basically about a kid going underground, having an underground adventure. So it's actually very immersive and I know, very entertaining. And it's got the top-down look to it, like sort of the old Nintendo games like Final Fantasy and those sort of old-school role-playing games. So it has that retro feel as well as being kind of very similar in terms of the spirit of the Goonies to you know, a little kid in this hidden underworld looking for treasure and also kind of looking for, you know, redemption and a way home. So yeah, that would be my recommendation. It's called Undertale, and it's actually it's a very good game. It's got some very good music to it as well.
Nice. All right. So my official deep cut recommendation is going to be escape rooms. Because I think that, you know, as much as we all want to find treasure and like solve these puzzles and, you know, do all these things, the closest we're going to get to it is an escape room, where you get to like learn a little bit of the story and like test your own smarts as you like solve Rube Goldbergian puzzles in order to find the thing that leads to the next thing that leads to the next thing. You know, I think they're really fun. I think they're a good use of, like, you know, a good way to spend your money, because like usually I think they're like pretty much locally owned. There's several in downtown Mesa that are like locally owned by, you know, families, and they create the stories and build the rooms and things like that. So try an escape room if you haven't already.
Very good.
When it's safe to do so.
Yeah. One day when the world is free.
In fact, one of the things that the escape room, we had scheduled an escape room adventure that we couldn't do because pandemic, and they every 3 months or so they're like, do you want to come to the escape room yet? And I'm like, no.
Wait, I've already escaped the escape room.
Yeah. I can't escape my home. So yeah, blah 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 blah. All right, where should people look to find your books and things of that nature, Mr. Craig Michael Curtis?
You can find my books online Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com. You can also find me on my Facebook page and CraigMichaelCurtis.com.
And where can people find the work of Mr. Blackwell?
Oh, Squishy Studios, I suppose. The same places every week.
Yes. And, of course, you can find me at nctphoenix.com. You can actually watch me do improv on the interwebs on Friday nights. And if you are local, Saturday nights, we have shows in the out of doors. And that's nctphoenix.com. And yeah, thank you for listening. If you haven't already done that thing where you like and thumbs up and rate and review, please do it. Consider it our treasure, since we can't get
our rich stuff.
Our rich stuff. Give us that review. We need it. We want it. We love it. Thank you so much. We appreciate you. And remember to be.
We need 10 more reviews to save our neighborhood.
We do.
Please.
They're going to build a golf course over this podcast.
And the guy is a real butthead. He's real. You would not like him. The guy who's building the golf course. You would not like him. You would wish for him to get shot out of a toilet cannon. So please review our podcast and be excellent to each other and party
on, dudes.
And never say die.
Goonies never say die.
Yes.